Hi guys, and welcome to A Dog's Soul. Today we're going to talk about the best positive reinforcement dog training tips for fearful dogs, because fearful dogs are quite special when it comes to training. I'm Anita, I'm a professional dog trainer. I show you how to build a trusting relationship with your dog to overcome fear and reactivity and have a good time together again. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. And now stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so why are fearful dogs special when it comes to training? A quote-unquote regular dog or normal dog is already trustful of you. So the dog will expect nothing bad coming from you because he has a history of good things coming from people. With fearful dogs, it's quite different. Of course, a fearful dog can be afraid of anything, and some dogs are really fine with people, and then we are not talking about distrust here. But when a fearful dog is afraid of people, we have a very different starting situation. The dog is expecting something dangerous from us, or at least he's not quite sure what to expect, and so he's very careful in interacting with us. And that's why we have to watch out for certain things a little bit more. And the first thing is our body language. So how are we acting, and in what position are we standing to the dog, and how are we moving towards the dog? It's not as bad when we move away because we are increasing distance and that makes things easier for the dog. But if we're moving towards the dog, we have to watch our body language very, very closely. And this is different for every fearful dog. Some dogs have learned that humans behave in a certain way. They are coming towards dogs in a very straight way. They are fixating dogs with their eyes. They are addressing the dog immediately. This is normal for us primates, right? And some dogs are fine with that, but as soon as a dog acts a little more consciously and tries to be very friendly to the dog, walks in curves and does not bend over the dog, turns the head away, doesn't look straight at the dog gets suspicious. Because this human acts different than every other human he has ever met. So this is actually something that could be more dangerous. Alright? So yes, being friendly towards the dog with a very disengaging or conflict-avoiding body language can be spooky for a fearful dog. Okay, so we have to watch out how the dog's reacting and act according to that. And whenever we see the dog showing any kind of fear response to a movement we do or a gesture or whatever, we should try to make that movement smaller. Watch our facial expressions, because some dogs really freak out when they see our teeth when we smile. Some dogs are very sensitive to loud praise, so whenever we are really happy and we want to express that and tell the dog how amazing he is and stuff like that, you see that my voice didn't pitch and it didn't get a lot louder. And that's actually because fearful dogs sometimes are very, very sensitive to that. And if we just do a, oh my god, you're such a great dog, oh my god, that can set off a fearful dog. Okay? So we have to keep our emotions a little in check, and we have to watch out for big emotions we have. And that not only goes for us being very excited and very happy, but it also goes for frustration. Because sometimes working with a fearful dog is extremely frustrating because we are making one step forward and 10 steps backs. Or at least it feels that way. And acting according to big emotions can set off a fearful dog. Yes, we are not robots and we can't watch out for everything and we can't be in control all the time. But as best as we can. We have to do it as best as we can. Another thing we usually use when it comes to positive reinforcement training is a marker word or a clicker. And some fearful dogs are actually startled by the sound of a regular box clicker. So I would recommend using either a marker word or a very quiet clicker. The downside of using a very quiet clicker is that it's not audible enough outside. A marker word is. On the other hand, a marker word always carries emotions when we are not very careful. So either use a marker word that can carry as little as possible, like good. Something like this, because it's not really a word. It's an abomination of the German word good, and therefore it's not carrying a lot of emotions. Or you use something that is really triggering a positive emotion in you. So you say it exactly the same way all the time. And of course, a marker word or a clicker has to be followed by any kind of reinforcer. And when we are training with fearful dogs, I would recommend using very high quality treats. This is different to quote-unquote normal dogs because very high quality treats tend to increase the arousal level. And with a regular dog, that can be too much. With a fearful dog, a higher arousal level very often helps us overcome the fear. That's why I always use very high quality treats. It also increases the chances that the dog will actually eat them. Because very often fearful dogs cannot really eat well in training situations in the beginning. Again, depending on how fearful they are and of what they are actually afraid of. And sometimes when we have a dog that is just afraid of everything and hiding under something and doesn't come out for us anyway, and we're just conditioning a marker signal with walking somewhere in the area, losing treats after the marker signal and leaving the room again, the higher the quality of the treats, the faster we can access the dog. Okay? And I already said leaving the room because with a fearful dog, it's very often even more useful to use functional reinforcers. Functional reinforcers are everything the dog wanted to have or do in a situation anyway. So that could be the dog is afraid of a box. I have such a dog, that's why it comes to mind. She's scared of every kind of box, package, whatever. And whenever she sees such a thing, she wants to get away from it. And the functional reinforcer for looking at the thing would be increasing distance, so going away from it. In combination with very high quality treats, we have a very, very fast training success. Very fast can mean anything. So for some dogs, very fast means a year. And yes, that's an extreme case, but For some dogs, it means 2 repetitions. So whenever we use something the dog wanted in the first place, we have the perfect reinforcer and we have the best training outcome possible. But sometimes that is really difficult. So whenever we can, I would use functional reinforcers. Of course, always in a way that is safe. We cannot let our passionate hunting dog go after any kind of wildlife, of course, but we can follow scents, just as an example. And the last point, and probably one of the most important ones, is we have to make tiny training steps. So the smaller the steps, the faster we have success. The faster we can click and repeat clicking, the faster the dog gets reinforcers, and the faster the dog learns. There is no frustration, because with fearful dogs, we want to avoid every uncomfortable emotion. And frustration is a very uncomfortable emotion. And often when there is a bad emotion coming up in the dog, a fearful dog will opt out very fast. And we don't want the dog opting out because he feels uncomfortable. We want the dog to participate and feel good and stop the training session when the dog is still feeling nice. Okay? And I forgot one very important point, the most important point actually, so this is really the last one now. No touching. This is a very difficult one for a lot of people, but getting touched in a training session is something most dogs have to learn to be comfortable with. With fearful dogs, it's an absolute no-go. Most fearful dogs, especially when they are afraid of people, don't want to get touched anyway. So they have to learn that, again, in very tiny steps. But if we try to touch them in a training session and they get overwhelmed by that, the trust we built up before with our tiny steps and high quality treats and positive reinforcement training is kind of destroyed because we abuse the dog's trust. And getting in the game again after such an incident is more tricky than it was the first time. So again, we as primates like to touch stuff. We like to use our hands. And this is very difficult for us to just not do. So what we can do instead is we are either holding treats in one hand and a target in the other, or we are holding on to something. That can be our own shirt, it can be a towel, it can be the floor, it can be anything, but we keep our hands busy so they don't just wander off, right? And if we keep all of that in mind, we can have great training sessions with a fearful dog. Again, it's very different if the dog is fearful of something but not of humans. Like the little girl who is afraid of any kind of packages. She's actually not afraid of me, and that makes things a lot easier. And sometimes she really likes when I offer contact. So scratchies or just being there for her to lean on. And that is a lot easier than a dog who is actually afraid of me. And still, even with those dogs, it's possible to have very, very good results. If we don't see any results, that would be a strong indicator that we need to have a vet behaviorist on board and maybe use medications. because a life in fear is not really worth living. So we need to help our dogs as best as we can and as fast as we can. And sometimes medication is the right way to go. Okay? That said, I wish you an amazing New Year's Eve with as little fear as possible and an amazing start into 2023. See you next time. Bye.